Welcome to the Only Football podcast with Kyle. It has been a pretty busy week. I would say not as busy as last week. I was trying to play a little intro for you guys as we got started, but it wouldn't let me go live, and then it did, and I had 2 seconds to spare. Yes, Rick is a very valuable asset to the Only Football program, and he's the only one that seems to be able to get all the producing stuff working, because every time I try to do it, I have to explain why I'm not as good as Rick. Thank you guys for tuning in. It is Wednesday, March 22nd, 2023. There has been some development. If you have just gotten off of JCA Sports, it was a great podcast. They talked about the Bulls. They talked about football. Specifically, they talked about Cam Newton. Cam Newton had a quote released, and he also was filmed throwing the ball. And he said, basically, there's not 32 mother effing quarterbacks better than me. Now, when I heard this, I thought to myself, I swore he said that exact quote last year on a podcast. So, I'm not sure if it's even a new quote or it's just something that was resurrected because he was filmed throwing a football. No, he said it again. I swear he said this before. I swear he said this before, but that doesn't mean he can't say it twice, especially if he believes it. So Cam Newton believes that there are not 32 quarterbacks better than him. And JCA Sports, they went through every single quarterback and had an honest assessment about it, I would say. It kind of flew right through, obviously, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, not even a debate. But as it got lower and lower, it got a little more difficult to try to figure out, is Cam Newton better than, let's say, Brock Purdy? Now, I personally don't think so. But I'm saying Brock Purdy was around the area that the conversation was at least, a discussion. All right. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. No one is going to even entertain that idea, right? But when we got to like 27, there was Taylor Heineke. And, they thought about that one a little bit. And no, Taylor Heineke, I'd rather have Taylor Heineke. There was one quarterback that we all pretty much agreed at this moment we would rather have Cam Newton, and that was Matt Ryan with the Indianapolis Colts. But here's the thing. Matt Ryan's not going to be the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts going into next season. So when Cam Newton says that he's better than the 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now, that's fine. But the thing is the 32 quarterbacks you're talking about aren't going to be the starting quarterback. So what you have to do, if you're being honest with yourself, you got to put Bryce Young on the Colts. You got to go ahead and put CJ Stroud on the Panthers. And I mean, you got to move these rookie quarterbacks where they're going to go. Obviously, Anthony Richardson's going to go somewhere. So let's just actually dive right into that. And then we'll talk a little more about the Cam Newton thing. So Bucky Brooks had just done top NFL draft prospects by the position. And he ranked the quarterbacks, the top 5 quarterbacks in the draft from 1 to 5. And number 1, CJ Stroud. And a lot of people had Bryce Young being the number 1 quarterback, especially going into the offseason. Bryce Young decides that he is going to wait and save himself for his pro day and not put on a show, while CJ Stroud put on a miraculous show in front of a lot of people that had an awful lot of pull with owners and agents. And, this is just one of those things that by not taking a shot, you better hope that the other quarterbacks don't have a great pro day, or not pro day, combine. And they did. Not only did CJ Stroud have one, but Anthony Richardson broke a lot of records in the combine. We got Bill in the chat. What's going on, Bill? Cheers. good to have you with us. You made it. I know that sometimes we finish up, but you always watch the videos and you still make comments and stuff like that. And we really appreciate you. So you look at the number one quarterback right now. It's C.J. Stroud. Bryce Young, he wanted to wait for his pro day. C.J. Stroud went out and balled, and because of that, you have C.J. Stroud projected to go number one. So that's not probably the best news for the Panthers. And the reason I say that is because the Panthers just had, I believe this was today at 1:30 p.m. The Panthers had CJ Stroud um, at their facilities, and they were watching CJ Stroud put on a workout. Now, one thing to keep in mind, CJ Stroud did not run a 40-yard dash in the combine. And I think it said in here somewhere, okay, the speed question answered. After declining to participate in the 40-yard dash a few weeks ago, it said unofficially clocked. Oh, no, this is Smith. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name. NJIGBA. No, not doing it. But apparently, as far as the Panthers are concerned, CJ Stroud, not only did he put a show on at the combine, but he backed that up, put on another show in front of the Panthers. And I'll read a little bit of the article here. It said, if anyone wondered if CJ Stroud NFL scout and combine performance was a fluke, they got their answer on Wednesday. Absolutely not. Stroud ranked as the draft's top quarterback position, put together another fantastic performance at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center during his pro day. So I guess that's where he worked out. Stroud spent most of the early portion of the day in a gray Nike tracksuit. So just visualize this, okay? This was today. Stroud was in a gray Nike tracksuit, standing front and center, cheering on his teammates. That's something you want to see, right? Cheering on teammates. It shows that you are not just, so consumed within yourself that you can't step outside of that and cheer other people on. That's a good thing to demonstrate. Anyone can say it, but can you actually do it? And here we go. So he's cheering on his teammates while they tested in the vertical jump, bench press, and 40-yard dash. So CJ Stroud just being a team player right here. When the time came for CJ to throw, the show truly began. Ooh, a lot of anticipation there. With hits from Rick Ross and Meek Mill pumping through the facility speakers, Stroud worked through a full script of passes, displaying his abilities in front of a throng of NFL scouts. Not a thong, a throng. Coaches, front office, personnel, media members gathered inside Ohio State's Fieldhouse. So this was Ohio today. A lot of publicity, a lot of people. Obviously, there are certain teams that we heard about the Panthers last week, or might have been even earlier this week. They said they have a lot of convictions about who to pick because they feel that there are two good quarterbacks. But here's the interesting part. It doesn't matter that the Panthers are torn because the Panthers aren't picking first. And the Texans are. Oh, wait, no. Carolina traded. Wow. Okay. So that makes a lot more sense. So Carolina, yeah, DJ Moore. Wow. Welcome to the future. Okay. I was in my head still thinking Houston's picking first. So you're just going to get whatever they don't want. Get over it. Okay. So Carolina's picking first. So, okay, the conviction. Back to that. They're trying to decide right now because they really feel that they're torn between two quarterbacks that both have a pretty high ceiling. Now we know a lot of drafts have done this. This is pretty much the same headline every year for the most part. Besides once in a while, there's a quarterback that is just so outside of the rest, like Trevor Lawrence was. when he was drafted. Joe Burrow was that guy when he was drafted. Um, but there's those, let's say, Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, right? Who are you going to go with? And even Peyton Manning with Ryan Leaf. So this is just part of the deal. We're getting closer to the draft. We're less than a month away from every team having their quarterback. It's crazy. So you get to this part of the deal here, and these little performances are very important because if you're torn on two people, and I would think as a scout, and I'm not a scout by any means, but I would think as a scout that if you're torn on two players and one of them has an amazing pro day at Ohio State and the other one has a average day at Alabama, I would hope that more factors into the long-term decision than something like that, because a bad pro day, a good pro day, medium pro day, it's all very temperamental. You need to know that the decision you're making benefits the team in the long haul. And like I said, Carolina says that they're totally torn right now about who they're going to get. Bill in the comments says Panthers, Texans, Cardinals, Colts, Seahawks, Lions, Raiders, Falcons, Bears, Eagles, Titans, Texans, Jets, Patriots, Packers, Commanders, Steelers, Lions are the top few, just for reference. Okay, draft picks. I was like, I didn't know if you were saying teams with a better quarterback than Cam Newton. Okay, thank you for putting that in that order. Obviously, the Seahawks picking at number 5. Not ready to talk about that. So Stroud puts on a good show. Now, how much is it actually going to matter? Probably a good amount, because even though I said you shouldn't put all your eggs in this basket, what makes it a little bit different is that Stroud outperformed the expectations in Indianapolis at the combine. He outshined what anybody thought he was going to do. He had one of the smoothest combines ever. There was I forgot who it was, but somebody that, runs the show over there tweeted that it was one of the most pure quarterback drill that he ever has seen in his history of doing this. Every throw, every touch pass, even the Hail Marys were going 60 yards right in the breadbasket. I mean, this dude balled. So when he does his pro day now, to a certain extent, and here's one of the things me and Rick are talking about Bryce Young deciding not to do it. Now, can he do it twice? Now, here's what's at stake here. Stroud shows up, doesn't have the same type of day. Now, is it a fluke? Is it was he just having a good day? Well, Stroud doubled down on it. He said he left everybody pretty much speechless. This is the exact words. Stroud was just as sharp as he was during his awe-inspiring showing in Indianapolis, completing throws with precise timing, ball placement, showing off one of his greatest strengths, accuracy. When the script called for some test of his mobility, he worked inside the pocket well too. The only time he showed any minor difficulty was when throwing off platform when rolling to his left. And even then, the passes still landed within their intended target's catch radius. Right? So they're just saying it wasn't as beautiful as the other ones, but they're still catchable balls. He's a pinpoint passer, said Brooks during the NFL Live coverage at the event. And they said a lot more things. So I think things are looking pretty good for CJ Stroud to be drafted number 1 overall. And I would say that at this point, I'm not even sure if there's something that Bryce Young could do to change that. And kudos to CJ Stroud. It takes a lot of cojones to, with all that pressure, he could have just said, you know what, I'm going to be the number 2 pick. I don't need to take any risks. I could just play it safe. If me and Bryce both don't do a damn thing, we're both probably going to go 1-2. And they're like, no, I'm gonna show the world because it's not luck. That's really betting on yourself. It's like you don't have to worry about being nervous or having a bad game when you're really that dude. And I got you, Bill. I'll see you in a second. So, yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of hard work to become that confident, and hard work pays off. So, CJ Stroud, I think he's going to be your first overall pick, and he's going to be the Panthers' next quarterback. Panthers now coming back to the Cam Newton conversation. Cam Newton says there's not 32 teams better. CJ Stroud is going to be probably the closest thing I will say that the Panthers have had since Cam Newton. And it is kind of ironic how this news kind of surfaces today about how well he did with Cam Newton throwing passes with somebody's, iPhone recording. I think he was like rolling to his right and he threw it across his body, and it was a good pass. It was a good pass, but we don't really know the details. How many passes did he throw before that? Like anybody can, and I'm not hating on him. I'm really not, but it just kind of feels like the the Napoleon Dynamite, the Uncle Rio, and he's just not willing to let it go. He's recording himself outside of his RV, and he's like, "You think I could throw it over that mountain?" And he's like working on his 3-step drop back and just like throwing the ball into the dirt. It almost That's a very extreme example, but it just feels like Cam Newton isn't willing to let go of his career, and he still feels that it didn't end in a good way. And I mentioned this on the show before. I said I think the problem is with Cam Newton, um, or at least what I would conceive this issue to be is that there was no closure to Cam Newton, especially like his career wise. Like he was up here. I mean, the records that Carolina team broke and how good that offense was. They had, they were clearly the best offense in 2015. When they went to the Super Bowl, they were good. And Cam Newton was Superman. I mean, he could run all over. You couldn't tackle him. You couldn't bring him down. He was 240 pounds of muscle. He was a real problem. I mean, he was a problem at Auburn, and he just kind of rolled right in to the NFL, and he became a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He always was very, I would say vocal, confident. You could say cocky if you want to, but he was definitely not a quiet person. And if Cam Newton wants to play again, I think it's because there was no closure. He went from that mountaintop to being like not even good enough to be a backup. Now that doesn't make sense, right? It's because you think to yourself, why is Cam Newton not good enough to be a backup? Because we just saw yesterday, Mike White, and we're still waiting for Bridgewater, but we saw what's his name from Jacksonville. Gosh, I'm drawing a blank right now. Gardner Minshew. We just saw all these guys get moved around, and Cam Newton just seems like, yeah, I mean, he could definitely be a backup. Like if my starting quarterback got hurt and I saw Cam Newton throwing balls on the sideline, a little bit of me would be like, what if? You know what I mean? Like, what if Cam Newton, is still that guy and he just, hasn't had his chance? And that's what I feel like that's really what you want to give your team. There's nothing worse than your starting quarterback getting hurt and the backup throwing passes, and you're just hoping and praying that the injury is not serious because you have no hope with this guy. Now we had Bright Rippin, just to name a guy last year, and there was not any part of you that saw him warming up and you were like, all right, we can still beat the Chiefs when he went out. So I do think that is something that is nice to have in your team, is a backup that comes in with some sort of a ceiling or glimmer of hope. And I think Cam could provide that. But here's the issue. If you're a backup quarterback in the NFL, you have got to be a certain type of dude. You look at these guys that we just named: Taylor Heineke, Gardner Minshew, Mike White, um, even Carson Wentz, uh, not Matt Castle, Case Keenum. Go down the list. What do these guys all have in common? They keep their head down, they work hard, and they're quiet. Like, you don't hear anything about them. You don't hear them saying, "I'm better than 32 mother effing quarterbacks." And I will say, like, when it comes to teams picking their backup, they definitely all have one thing in common. Like, it's not just about like can they throw, can they play. Of course, you're in the NFL. Of course, that box is already checked. Um, it's the type of character that is needed for a backup. Tim Tebow, as much as would just made that example about having hope in your backup, no one really has too much hope unless you have one of the few backups that's really good. When we had Tebow, when we drafted him in 2010, we had Kyle Orton, I believe, at quarterbacking. Orton I think it was like week 5, and we were 1-4, and Tebow came into the game, and I'll tell you, everybody it was like that place was ignited with passion, and I was like, this is a powerful thing. The backup comes in, and the entire place stands up on their feet. Now that is something really cool to have, but here's what it also is. It's a problem with the locker room. It's a problem when your starting quarterback, who your owner, your GM, your head coach, your whole team has believed in that person. They have a bad game, and the fans are chanting, "Cam, Cam, Cam." It is definitely not good for the ego, the mental. It's not good for the team. I mean, and you saw, who was it that it was like, man, was it 1 year ago? There was a quarterback that had been, this is going to happen to Jordan Love this year. The head coach and everybody's going to give that. Oh, it was Trey Lance last year. Kyle Shanahan made it really clear in the offseason. It didn't go well, but he made it very clear. He said, Jimmy Garoppolo is on the trading block, and Trey Lance is our quarterback moving forward. And he specifically said that was such a great feeling, because he said, now that the players can fully trust me. Now we can go have lunch and dinner together. It's like, now we can actually invest in this relationship because we know what we're doing here. And that is important for every QB1. They have to know, I'm the quarterback of this team, whether we suck or we're good, because I'm good enough to be a QB1. Being benched is out of the equation. I will never be benched. I'm not bad enough to be benched. But I'm telling you, you put a guy like Cam Newton, big personality, you put him behind your QB1, you better hope your quarterback never throws 3 picks and a half, because it's going to be Cam Newton. And that is the reason Tebow, I believe, because look, he comes in and look, say what you want about, whatever the person of Tim Tebow. You could say what you want about his throwing motion. He was just not a good quarterback. It doesn't really matter. Here's the thing. Tebow came in for the Broncos, and we were like 1-5, and he got us to 8-8, and he also won a playoff game to Demaryius Thomas, first play in overtime, 80-yard touchdown pass to DT. Rest in peace, Demaryius Thomas. The greatest play I probably have ever witnessed in my entire life, and also the shortest overtime in history to this day. And Tebow never started another down at quarterback. And I just thought, man, you come into just a total chaotic situation, dysfunction, and then you get the team winning and to the playoffs, and then you win a playoff game. And yeah, we got our asses beat by New England in the divisional round. It was like really bad. I think like 41-7 or something. But you're not good enough to be a backup quarterback? No, 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 no. Tebow is definitely good enough to be a backup quarterback. Tebow is too big of a personality to be a backup quarterback. And Cam Newton, unfortunately, is the same way. Now, if Cam Newton has, since being out of the league and being kind of, you know, uh, pushed out of the league, if he would have just kind of like humbled himself and gotten like, I'm just going to put my head down. I just want to, you know what I mean? I just want to be a mentor to a young guy, whatever the case is. I think maybe he could get a shot. But then, the 30, I'm better than 32, and I'm not trying to take it out of context. I don't think he said it in an angry way. I think it was like joking, like, they ain't 30. I think it was just a confidence thing. But, you know, Cam comes with that Tebow stuff, and backup quarterbacks, they want him to literally be the opposite of that. So I think it could be interesting if Cam gets an opportunity. I think it's going to be with an organization that is probably historically a little dysfunctional. Maybe because that's all kind of the status quo for what a backup wants. So you need a team that just doesn't really care about status quo, and a team that's just like the Jets. Maybe. Well, now they got Aaron Rodgers coming in, but I could see like my whole lifetime, I feel like the Jets were kind of a wild card. Cleveland definitely doesn't care. They'll let anyone throw footballs over there. Um, the Raiders, right? The Raiders are just always kind of ruining good people's careers and taking chances on bad players. They don't. They're is it Al Davis that doesn't seem to really have a grip on anything, and any success sustained is very short lived. Maybe a team like that would take Cam Newton, but I think it'll be a stretch, and it's nice though. I honestly I hope somebody would take a chance on him because I think he needs that closure in his career. He needs to turn the chapter from my professional career to life after football, and I just think the way it ended was so abrupt that he hasn't been able to do that. Bill says, I was surprised to hear Cam coming back up with all the who's left at QB news. That was going that was going around. It makes sense to take your shot. Yeah, absolutely. I like Tebow for you guys. I never understood why they moved off him, but I wasn't paying much attention to football back then. And I will tell you real quick, we moved off of Tim Tebow because um, Peyton Manning came into town. So we had the sheriff the year that the Broncos won that playoff game. Indianapolis was 1-15. They were the worst team in the NFL without Manning. Shows you how valuable he was. This team's always 13-3, 14-2. No Manning, 1-15. I mean, just dude, talk about glue. Talk about a guy holding that thing together. He had neck surgery that year. He probably needed back surgery as well because he was definitely carrying that team. So they draft Andrew Luck with the first overall pick, and Manning starts flying. He flew to Tennessee. He flew to San Francisco. He flew to Denver. He decides after sitting down with a man named John Elway that he wants to be a part of rich history and have his jersey retired and have a plaque of his own outside. And we had to let Tim Tebow go because he just wasn't anything. I mean, we had Peyton Manning. We were like, dude, we'll do whatever you want, and you're not going to have Tim Tebow behind Peyton Manning. Just too much. That's what I'm saying. It's just way too much. So Cam Newton, big personality. Not sure if anyone's going to take even want to deal with that. The PR headache that comes with it. It's not fair. It's honestly, you can make an argument it's not fair because as much as the NFL, you know, not the NFL, but even the teams, they want to be very inclusive and have everybody feel like they're a part of it. And but then when you have a guy with too big of a personality, they don't get a shot. The same thing with Tebow. It's like, oh, inclusivity is, a big part of the NFL until it's inconvenient and a PR headache. And then all of a sudden, what? I didn't hear anything. So, yeah, maybe someone will take a chance on him and maybe he'll come into a game and maybe he'll totally suck. And maybe that'll give him some closure. Or maybe he'll come into a game and be better than I mean, it's kind of like if you've ever been close to somebody who lived a really good life but got sick with like cancer at the end of their life, and you kind of don't want to remember them that way, because like when the pictures you're looking at the very end of their life, you just see, you're like, that's not, grandpa that I knew. He looks weak and skinny here. He was a strong, tough man. He worked at a steel factory. I just think a little bit of Cam wanting to come back. It's like, look, it didn't work out in New England. It didn't work out when you went back to Carolina. And that was a very short stunt. And it's all right, man. Like, we're not going to remember you like that. We're always going to remember you as Cam Newton. And you know what I mean? And I just feel like he's got something to prove, and hopefully he comes to peace with that. So let's look at a big blockbuster trade that happened. It's not really a big blockbuster trade, but it was a lot of moving pieces today. The Jets trying to get a receiver. Now, they just got Alan Lazard. They still have Garrett Wilson. And obviously, you heard Aaron Rodgers wants to bring back the entire wide receiver room from Super Bowl 2010. We'll see if that goes. But Elijah Moore got traded from the Jets. So Elijah Moore gets traded. A third round pick goes to the Browns for a second round pick. So let me give you the details here. The Cleveland Browns have acquired some badly needed receiver help. Shortly after signing ex-receiver Mecole Hardman, the New York Jets flipped Elijah Moore to the Browns in swap of 2023 NFL draft picks. And that was reported by Ian Rappaport. And so, yeah, I would say these aren't like wide receiver ones by any chance. These are definitely your wide receiver threes. But, I mean, these are guys that you would want on a team. Now, there's also the Patrick Mahomes effect. So, Mecole Hardman, how good is he? Well, there's been time after time that the Chiefs have decided to get rid of wide receiver twos and threes. And I'm not talking about Tyreek Hill. I'm talking about Sammy Watkins, those type of guys. And we never really saw them kind of be what they were in Kansas City. So that's the Patrick Mahomes effect. And will Mecole Hardman, be able to, thrive with Deshaun Watson? I don't know. I honestly, I still have a lot of questions about Deshaun Watson as a person. Let me hit some of these comments really quick. Bill said, okay, that makes sense. Manning is a step up. Manning is like a ladder up. He's like, yeah, he's a GOAT. So I still have my question marks about Deshaun Watson. To be completely honest, he came back at the end of the year. At that point, he was like, hadn't played football in 2 freaking years. So you take 2 years off, and it does take some time to get it going. Now, if you guys remember this, if you're watching whatever platform you're watching this, go ahead and throw in the comments. When Michael Vick came out of prison after the dog fighting, do you remember if he, and it's not a test, I really don't know, was Michael Vick the Michael Vick that, when he was in Philly, he was good, but was he good right away? Or did it take like 10 weeks of football for him to get back to his form? Now, I could quickly YouTube Michael Vick's first game back, but I feel like that would be time consuming and distracting for being live on the air. So I'll let you guys clue me in. And if you don't know, that's cool too. So Deshaun Watson getting some help at receiver. Now I haven't heard anything about Amari Cooper, so I'll Google that really quick just to verify. But Amari Cooper is definitely he had over 1,000 yards again last year. He is a solid receiver, but he is getting older, and I don't think you can really ask him to be a wide receiver one. So let's see right here. No, it looks like Amari Cooper is still still on the Cleveland Browns. So now they got McCole Hardman, Amari Cooper, and to me, I would like to have one more dude. Um, just one more like actual wide receiver one. Maybe they'll go for one in the draft potentially. DeAndre Hopkins is available. Now I don't know how much money they have because they gave Deshaun Watson a $732 trillion contract, all fully guaranteed. But right now, I'm sorry, I forgot about Peoples Jones. Peoples Jones is good, but it's just like another one of those kind of RB2s or wide receiver twos. There's not really, and it's another open-ended question. If you have enough wide receiver twos, do you need a wide receiver one? Because you could make an argument that if you get enough, because look, the Broncos are in the situation. They have Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, and Jerry Jeudy. I think all of those wide receivers are better than wide receiver three, but none of them have been performing at a wide receiver one. But I also don't think that there's a void in the Denver Broncos. Bill responding to the Michael Vick comment. Vick came in as a backup in 2009, but became the Eagle starter in 2010. That sounds familiar. Okay. Yeah, that sounds right. Vick just kind of came in. And look, we talked about backups being, quiet, keeping their head down. I don't remember. Obviously, I had to ask this question. So Michael Vick obviously didn't come in, making a scene. He just wanted to come back. He was very humble and quiet, admitted what he did was wrong, and he got his shot at redemption. And he's a really good redemption story for the NFL because you could tell that the change was real for him. I mean, we've seen people say the right things just to get off the exempt list, and then weeks later they're getting busted for the same stuff. And Michael Vick, I mean, although that specific crime is probably harder to commit again, it's not like he was smoking pot or you could do that again, but I'm going to get a whole dog ring, that takes a lot of an investment to do that. But Michael Vick just also seemed like he was this kind of like wise older person that could mentor the younger guys that were coming out to not make stupid mistakes. And he was doing also a lot of documentaries. I mean, his PR team, they put a lot of work in building his reputation up, and they did a great job. They really did. But yeah, I think it's a good move here for Cleveland, adding some depth at wide receiver. I see right here, Bill says, I'll be your research department today. Thank you, Bill. I actually appreciate that. More signings going on right now. The Jacksonville Jaguars, and we'll stick with the Browns, have signed a former Browns running back, Dearness Johnson, to a one-year contract. And I'll tell you what, if you're a Jaguars fan, I love this. I absolutely love this move right here because if you guys didn't know who Dearness Johnson is, then you're not a Broncos fan because we played the Browns last year and Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt were missing in action that game. They were both hurt. They couldn't play. And I thought that we were going to have a huge leg up on the competition. No Nick Chubb, no Kareem Hunt. Well, Deontay, or how do you pronounce it? Dearnest Johnson. He ended up having 146 yards on the ground. He had 22 carries, 146 yards, and a touchdown in week 7 against Denver. We all knew who Dearness Johnson was after that game. I mean, he came out and just freaking balled out. And man, we keep using this metaphor that when you're behind pros, it rubs off on people. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt is the best two-headed monster in the backfield of any team in the NFL. And I don't think anybody would even really argue that. Maybe when Zeke was still really good, you could say Zeke and Pollard, but he hasn't really been good since Pollard's been who he is now. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of another one. I think Madison and Dalvin Cook are really good together. Elijah Mitchell and CMC are pretty good, but Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, the fact that they've been able to keep these two on the team is pretty impressive for as long as they've been. Because I think both of these guys could definitely be RB1s anywhere. So, not surprised that, Dearness Johnson doesn't get a lot of playing time, with Kareem Hunt's in the game, Chubb's resting. Chubb goes in, Kareem Hunt rests. That's pretty much it. Dearness Johnson, though, I mean, really capitalized on his opportunity, and he looked like a guy that could definitely be. He had the ceiling to be an RB1, and he was definitely capable of being an RB2. So Jacksonville picks him up, and now they're going to have their own little two-headed monster with Travis Etienne and Dearness Johnson. Now, I really think that Dearness Johnson has a really, really high ceiling. It's kind of seems like, I haven't heard of this dude. A lot of people haven't. I understand that, but just watch the tape. He has very good ball carrier vision. He's, hard to bring down. He breaks a lot of tackles. He's quick. He's elusive. There's a lot to love about this guy, and I'm trying to see the contract that it doesn't give me a number like money wise. Yeah, and Bill's saying right here, Dearness Johnson is going to be an expensive one either. Good move. Yes, and that's what these GMs, man, that's what they get paid the big bucks for. They could have tried to do something splashy and get, a Zeke or somebody like that. No. Dearness Johnson, this is a solid pickup for a team that's already going into the playoffs. They went into the playoffs last year. They went head to head with the Chiefs. They dropped a lot of passes. They fumbled on the goal line. They kicked themselves over and over and over, but they're not losing their players. They got a young team. They're keeping the band together, and they're adding guys like Dearness Johnson over here. And I just really think this is an underrated move. And I'll keep you guys honest on that as the season goes on. So here we go. We're going to move on to the free agencies. There are obviously some big names that are still vacant, including Odell Beckham Jr., of course, Teddy Bridgewater as a backup still available. So this is an article I thought I would share with you guys that say what the best home would be for each player. Odell Beckham Jr., he is apparently the best fit to be a New York Jet. Now, we just talked about the trade that happened with Cleveland, and I thought maybe Cleveland could have been on that list too. But, maybe there's some bad blood there. Odell not wanting to go back. Understood. This is what the article says. This was not going to be a sales pitch for Beckham to reunite with the Browns. Even before Cleveland dealt for Elijah Moore, Dallas traded for Brandon Cook seems to take the Cowboys out of the running. Good point. Dallas was a name that was linked to Odell, but now, the Brandon Cooks move. So what's left is a handful of teams with differing motivations for adding a veteran like Beckham. Kansas City always seems to be in the market for receiving talent. Kadarius Toney. It doesn't say this here, but another thing to note, they just got rid of McCole Hardman. Wonder what they're clearing up some space for there. Kadarius Toney was acquired, as Bill, of course, knows. And he's saying, I'm going to go with the Jets, though, because Aaron Rodgers' decision to facilitate a trade changes everything for New York, a city Beckham knows intimately with his time with the Giants. And the Jets are in a win-now mode and still have room at the position. So they would have McCole Hardman, Allen, Lazard. They would obviously have Odell in this situation, and then Garrett Wilson. I think Aaron Rodgers can do more than enough with that. I think he hasn't had, I don't think, that deep. 2010, he had Donald Driver and Greg Jennings and Jordy Nelson, but it's been a while since you looked on the roster. The Packers have been just kind of wide receiver 3 in it, besides Devontae Adams. So I think this is potentially a really cool thing, and it's almost kind of like, you're giving him a shiny new car. It's like Aaron Rodgers comes to the Jets. And hey, what's this present over here behind the curtain? You thought you opened them all? There's one more hiding, like the Christmas Story Red Ryder BB gun, and it's Odell Beckham Jr. I think that would start off a good little trust between the two parties. Bill said OBJ's not going back to Cleveland. Dallas is out on him. KC is one team. Jets are the other, of course. Rodgers, OBJ would like the Giants. Tweeted Saquon about it, but the money is an issue. And I could see that because it seems like the Giants have, had to make some tough financial decisions. I would imagine if they had any extra money laying around, Saquon Barkley wouldn't be tagged. He would have a deal because although you can make an argument to not pay running backs, you can also make an argument that Saquon Barkley, after his two injuries, he still has a lot of tread on the tires. I mean, yeah, they're serious injuries, but what do we know? What do we know about Saquon Barkley? He came back fully healthy this year. He was doing all of the same cuts. He looked like vintage Saquon Barkley. So now that, not kind of losing himself through injury is a box we can check. Now we have basically like 2 seasons of him not playing. So he's been in the league, 4 years, and he's played like probably 2.5 seasons if you add it all together. I think at this point in his career, it's actually a good thing. I think that you could sign him for a 4-year contract and expect him to not do what Zeke did. I think you could expect him to have 4 straight years of being the NFL's leading rusher. And I mean, that's not like a crazy big take. I mean, everybody's pretty much high on Saquon, but Odell Beckham to the Jets. We'll see if it happens. Odell Beckham's 30 years old. So another guy that's just had injury after injury, didn't even play last year. But once again, if Odell is able to cut and turn and do all the things that make him great, who cares if he hasn't been playing, in the last couple years? As long as he's in shape and he's still OBJ, I don't see an issue with it. So it probably wouldn't be a long-term deal, but I think that was part of his deal last year, was that he didn't want to sign a 1-year deal. Odell was very clear about that he wanted somebody to really believe in him. So this is kind of what makes the Jets a little tricky, because Aaron Rodgers is kind of year to year, and Odell wanting, I'm not sure what the number is, I'd imagine 3 or more years on a contract to cash as much money as he can. But if Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be there, then I don't know if Odell's going to want to be there. Now, if he goes to a place like Kansas City on a 3-year, $60 million deal, that would be too much. But let's say a 3-year, $50 million deal to Kansas City, that makes sense because Mahomes isn't going anywhere. It's somewhat affordable. And if there's one guy that could make Odell look like vintage Odell, it would be Patrick Mahomes for sure. Hit this comment right here. Bill said Saquon extend at $12.5 million a year, 4 years with an out after. Oh, he extended. Okay, that's right. I thought when we were talking about Daniel Jones, when we said why didn't they tag Daniel Jones, I thought you said that they used their tag on Barkley. That's the only reason I got confused there. But he said the Jets means he's at least in the same stadium. That's what I want anyway. Fair enough. Here's one. Interesting. Bobby Wagner. And Bobby Wagner was the longest tenured Seahawk. And he found out through the internet that he was getting released by the Seahawks. There was some bad blood there. And then he went to a division rivalry team, division rival Los Angeles Rams. And I thought he had a pretty good solid year. I didn't pull up his stats here, but he played every single game. I saw him up close at the Broncos game on Christmas. He had an interception, might have even taken it to the house. But Bobby Wagner is still a really solid linebacker. Now he is 33 years old, so he's getting a little bit older. You got to, keep that in mind. What kind of deal is he going to get? I would say probably a 2-year deal wherever he goes. But this article is linking him back to the Seattle Seahawks, who released him. And it says in this article, he had a year to process the anger he felt after Seattle released him. And after the Rams' repeat bid failed in 2022, Wagner just might feel the pull of the place that was his only NFL home until he played in LA last year. And I don't know if it was a month ago, but me and Rick have talked about this. Have you ever noticed players that played in one place for a long time that get traded to LA? They always say the same thing. It doesn't feel like home. And I know you could say that about, a lot of players just because it's hard to get pulled from somewhere you've been for a while. But I think specifically LA is different because I'll give you an example. Von Miller being in Buffalo. You haven't heard him say anything like that. He says the word family a lot. Buffalo's like a family, everyone's surrounding. White elephant, everyone's giving presents. Josh Allen shoveling each other's driveways to get to games. I mean, it's a family over there. But when Von Miller went to LA in the middle of the season, he's been a Bronco his whole life, goes to LA, and then wins the freaking Super Bowl. And what is he doing 2 weeks later? He's on the beach writing a tweet, 5280, which is the amount of feet in elevation that Denver is. He said, I kind of want that old thing back. I want to come home. What is a dude that just won the Super Bowl doing, missing home in Los Angeles, California? And I really thought about this, and now Bobby Wagner, the same thing, saying that he wants to go home potentially. I just think that sometimes when you are in a city that's very big, and I lived in Miami for 9 years, so I understand, Miami's not a huge city, but it is considered, Miami, Chicago, LA, New York. It is considered like that. So the problem is people are doing so much around. Like there's so much to do. It's like this restaurant's opening. There's an art show over here. There's a play going on over here. The strip mall's got this. There's roller coasters in the background. All these tourists are at this part. All of a sudden, it's like the Rams are playing. I didn't even realize it was 8:30. The Rams are playing right now. You don't even realize that the team's playing until you're driving home and you're wondering why there are police on the street guiding traffic. And that's how it was with the Heat. You'd be like, oh, the Heat must be playing today. Damn, let me get out of my Uber and walk because we're not going to be moving. Look, people that play in places that are like home and family, Buffalo, Denver, Green Bay, they can't, they don't want to go play for teams that the only reason they know that that team's playing is because traffic's out of control. They want to play for a team that, shovels your driveway just so you can get to the stadium because they want to get you to your football game on time. And I understand that. And I could see how that is, it's a homey feeling. Even, I was talking to my brother about this yesterday. Even the holidays don't feel quite as nostalgic in Miami as they do in other places where it snows. It's just like, ooh, we're going to bundle up with hot cocoa in Miami. It's like you're at the beach. It's Christmas. It's like if you were just dropped here and you had no idea what day it was, you would think it's, it could be any month of the year. You would know it's not summer, but the point is I think sometimes these players, they've had a taste of what it's like to be somewhere for a long time. If LA is going to bring in people, I think the draft is their best bet. Don't give them a taste of, these other organizations that have this home aspect and then pull them away from it and expect them not to get a little bit sad and disappointed. And Bill saying whenever Rams or Chargers are playing SoFi, stadium's mostly filled with fans of whatever team is visiting. It's weird. And that is totally true. And that has a lot to do with it being a tourist destination. If you're, going to go travel to see your team play on the road, let's go to Miami, let's go to LA. You know what I mean? I don't want to go to Cleveland to watch the Broncos play. Um, but totally. I mean, there's just also just not like there's so many options too. And not only does LA have a lot of entertainment options, but they have two different football teams. So you got to pick your football team on top of that. The Lakers, won the NBA championship, and it's just life moves on. I mean, I know that was during COVID year, but it wasn't like, you know, places were shut down and, it was just crazy riot. People have life. They don't have time for sports. They got business meetings to get to. Jadeveon Clowney, Baltimore Ravens. That to me makes sense. Baltimore's really good at stealing defensive players that are not at the very end of their career and getting a good 4 years out of them. They did this with my Derek Wolf. Got his autograph back there. He is known for shooting the mountain lion, the 7-foot mountain lion that was eating all the dogs in Colorado. He had to hike up like a 10-mile hill on his hands and knees and wrestle this thing. It was a pretty crazy story. Check it out on the Joe Rogan podcast if you have time. He also talks a lot about the NFL and, what the physical beating of being in the NFL, and it's very graphic. So yeah, this one makes sense to me. Jadeveon Clowney ended in Cleveland in ugly fashion. His frustrations with defensive coordinator Joe Woods was boiling over to the point that he didn't even play Week 18. So joining another AFC North team would be fitting for Clowney, who would get some kind of revenge game or something like that going on. And Bill's right here. He said, I'm only like 20 minutes away from there. Whenever Rams are okay, only like 20 minutes away from there. That's right. Bill is in LA, and that I can't believe I didn't know that until last week. In my head, I always thought you were in New York, but look, I'm in Seattle, Washington, so I understand. It's hard to be a fan from another coast. My whole life being a Bronco fan in Florida, it's like you have to go to a sports bar every single week just to see your team play. And then, wherever you end up going, you have no audio to the game. You just have to watch it, and man, just the things you take for granted when you live in your own town. You can just basic cable, turn on the local channels and watch your team play. So that would be a pretty good fit, I think, in Baltimore. DJ Chark, wide receiver for the Jaguars. Oh my gosh, I just splashed that on me. DJ Chark to the Kansas City Chiefs. Honestly, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. These are the guys that the Chiefs get. DJ Chark. He's 26 years old. He's young. I think with Mahomes, he could, have a really good second chapter to his NFL career. He would have Juju Smith-Schuster there. Or no, Juju Smith left for New England. I forgot. So he would, I'm trying to even think who's there right now because they got rid of McCole Hardman, Juju Smith. I'm going to look up their wide receiver room right now. It's like Kansas City consistently gets rid of their players, even Orlando Brown, and you just never even question it. You're like, yeah, they'll get the new guys. Here it is. Wide receiver depth chart. Because it's definitely changed a lot. And if it's actually as bad as I think it is in my head, that means that Odell Beckham might be coming into town. Kadarius Toney, we talked about him. But who else? Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore. Okay, so they're keeping like all these same guys. I just forgot their names because they're not like huge names, but I should have remembered them because I wrote an entire segment on those guys. So yeah, they'll be fine. Dalton Reisner, offensive lineman for the Denver Broncos, Great man, I'm telling you, this guy is such a solid dude. I even saw this video of like the moment he engaged to asked his wife to marry him, his proposal, and they're just like really down to earth, good people. He played at Kansas. He had a foundation called Rise Up where he like was like a big brother to like disabled kids and stuff like that. One of the most pure guys I've probably ever met. He just reminds me of like Tim Tebow. I've met Tim Tebow like 5 times being in Jacksonville. But I was at the Seahawks, preseason game, and it was, the Broncos last year, not last year, the year before, and I took off my shirt while the Broncos were running off the field, and I'm screaming like a lunatic. It's freaking preseason, right? And I'm screaming, "Dalton!" I'm screaming everybody's name that can run by, and Dalton looks over straight at me in the eyeballs and goes like this, because there's, like, 7 fans here. I'm the only one with my shirt off, though, and he looks at me and goes, "I can do one." And he runs over to me, and I didn't even have a marker. I panicked. I was like, "Shit, I don't even have a marker." And the guys are like, "Oh, we got you." And they hand me the marker and he signs my sweater. I have it hanging. Actually, I'll show you right here. You guys are like, "Dude, we don't care about your offensive lineman that signed your sweater." Here it is. Dalton Reisner. Yeah. He he signed that, and I think he said like God bless or something really nice and sweet, and ran off the field. But man, I just remember after that game like being at a bar in Seattle and just like, I can't believe I met Dalton Reisner. I shook his hand and my girlfriend's just like, "That's really sweet." It's like, you're a grown man. Like literally you guys are the same age. You need to get your shit together. It's like, yeah, probably. So they're saying Dalton Reisner might be going to Buffalo. And I think that would be a good place for him. Buffalo. I mean, Dalton Reisner's good at run blocking. That's his thing. Pass blocking, not so much. Dalton Reisner has had his issues, but he's dedicated to his craft and he's willing to work really hard. I also like it because it pairs him with Von Miller. I think that would be a really neat pairing. And plus, I like it because Buffalo is a contender, and I always want to see my ex Broncos go on to I wouldn't want to say better things because I always want Denver to win the Super Bowl, but if that's not an option, I want them to. I don't want to see them go to Houston purgatory or something like that. So I would like to see that. Marcus Peters, who was on the Pro Bowl last year as cornerback, he's 30. They're saying Peters is, or the Ravens are, slow playing his first experience with unrestricted free agency. So they're saying that Baltimore is probably going to resign Marcus Peters. We'll see about that. Teddy Bridgewater, ooh, Green Bay Packers. He says, "Look, we know that the Aaron Rodgers era is finished in Green Bay. With Jordan Love ascending as the starting job, the Packers will need to find a new QB too. When healthy, Bridgewater is proven to be a quality backup." The one thing this article is missing, I think, is that Teddy Bridgewater is a true veteran. He is just an amazing guy. We have an award that we give out in Denver every year. It's the Demaryius Thomas Award, and it's a leadership award for who is the biggest leader on the team, just kind of like that guy that's the glue holding it together. The one year we had Teddy Bridgewater, not only did he beat out Drew Lock, which I know Drew Lock, but he won the starting job. He played the entire year under Vic Fangio's bad offense, and he won the leadership award. And if it weren't for Russell Wilson, who knows, we probably would have had to stick with him. So I love this for not Teddy Bridgewater, Jordan Love. Jordan Love needs a guy like Teddy Bridgewater. Bridgewater is also not obsessed with being seen, and he doesn't need to be on the field. Almost to the point where I question his passion for the game. There was a bye week with Teddy Bridgewater and the Broncos that one year, And when he came back, he was like, they were like, "Did you watch football?" And he's like, "No, I don't watch football when I'm not here." He's like, "To me, this is just like a job. You clock in, clock out." Very, very, his ability to cart separate, I can't say that word right now. His ability to separate work from real life was almost to a fault. So I think that's perfect for Jordan Love. Jordan Love doesn't want to have a guy breathing down his neck. You don't want to put a Cam Newton behind this dude. Go and get him a Teddy Bridgewater, throw him back there, call it a day. Frank Clark, defensive end for the Kansas City Chiefs. They're saying the Browns, look, we talked about it. They're saying bye to Jadeveon Clowney. And Clowney didn't even play week 18 because of the beef he had with the defensive coordinator. So the Chiefs probably are going to send Frank Clark maybe to the Browns. And these are all just guesses. Leonard Floyd is the last one here. This is contingent upon whether the Saints can convince their other player to come in. I can't. Yannick Njoku. I know I butchered that. I'm sorry. Floyd is older and somewhat similar, but with the Saints needing a replacement for Marcus Davenport up front, it makes sense. So Saints, Packers, Baltimore. Obviously, we talked about Dalton Risner and the Bills, DJ Chark going to the Chiefs. There's still a lot of moves to be made. And I know at this part of free agency, it's easy to just think, all the big names have found their home, but there's a lot to be done still. We talked Bobby Wagner going back to Seattle. A lot to be done. Now, I will say this is kind of a stall period in free agency. And as you see, like Zeke not getting signed, not surprising at all. And he won't be signed. Mark my words. I will put that on the record. Zeke will not be signed until after the draft because players or teams, if they haven't gotten them yet, it's because they're planning on drafting them. And so this is kind of like a dead period. We're less than a month away from the draft. The people that they really wanted, they went and got. And if they didn't, obviously there's going to be a couple here and there, like you saw McCole Hardman today. There's going to be guys like that continue to get deals probably every day or every other day. But a lot of these big names, the Bobby Wagners, the Zekes, they're going to probably have to wait until the draft is over. There's probably plenty of people in the draft room that say, this is our guy. If we don't get him, then we're getting Zeke. That's our plan B. None of these guys are the plan A. The plan A is probably the draft at this point. So that is going to be really, really fun to follow. And we're going to do a whole draft thing here. We're actually going to do a live draft analysis as best as we can. And, obviously we're football, NFL, but we don't really do college. So we're going to do the best that we can. Obviously, we're going to be watching highlights of these guys as they get drafted, just like the rest of the world. We're no different. So yeah, but we'll do that stuff live and we're going to talk about it and stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to doing that whole thing. And there was one more I wanted to mention here, and it's about the top 5 quarterbacks. So as I mentioned, it did change, and this is what's his name, Bucky Brooks. It's switched with CJ Stroud now being projected number 1, Bryce Young going number 2. But look at this one. Number 3, Hendon Hooker. That's Tennessee's quarterback. Now, I thought that was a name that I hadn't really heard a lot about. Like the Anthony Richardson buzz was crazy because his athleticism was insane on display in Indianapolis. He ran the 40, the broad jump, the high jump. You guys heard it. So I was surprised to see Hendon Hooker above him at number 3. But then I thought about it and I was like, Tennessee was pretty good this year. Like it's hard to evaluate teams because usually these teams that they're in competition with, those teams go to national championship games or they win them. Is it a coincidence? CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Alabama, Ohio State, 1 and 2. I mean, I do think sometimes the player gets inflated because the team is so good. And, the NFL is a little bit harder than that. So I actually have a lot of respect for a guy like Hendon Hooker at number 3. Went to Tennessee. Look, Peyton Manning didn't win a national championship at Tennessee. So if that's the, meter you're using to measure this thing, you gotta get out of that. You gotta look at what they did where they were. Um, Will Levis, and I still hope I'm saying that right. It might be Levis, but I'm gonna say Levis, or Levi's. Like the jeans. But he's at number 5, and Anthony Richardson sandwiched right in the middle at number 4. A lot of people, when I made that short about Anthony Richardson, came out. I don't want to say aggressive, but y'all let me know really quick that I need to calm down because I got a little excited about his pro day or combine, whatever. And y'all were like, he is not accurate. He makes bad choices, yada, yada, yada. And the only point I wanted to make about it is if he can get his mental IQ up to where his athleticism is, he could be really dangerous. Hendon Hooker, I kind of knew that he was going to be really good. I watched the Alabama Tennessee game when they like tore down the goalpost. I think that was like 50. That game was up there. It was like in the 50s. That was a great game. And obviously, he's a big part of the success Tennessee had this year. So I don't know if I'm the only one that just totally like drew a blank on Hendon Hooker. Probably because I'm so into the NFL, I get scope locked on this stuff. But when I read this article, I was like, Hendon Hooker, he's a name. I don't know who's in charge of boosting his public information on social media. I haven't heard anything about this dude like since the Alabama game almost. But I'm not really big into college, so don't take that too deep. Bill said, don't sleep on Hooker. Giants were looking at him, hoping he would drop in the draft. We had him out to the facility. Now that is interesting. You would have him out to the facility after signing Daniel Jones to a 4-year deal, which shows you once, and I said it a million times, but it shows you that they're not that committed to Daniel Jones. Not as committed as you have to be to pay somebody $40 million a year. And I know that we've talked about this, Bill, especially you and me, the day that it happened. But I just thought to myself, you know what? If you don't trust a quarterback enough to sign him for 7 years, then you should have tagged him and not given him a 4-year deal. I just can't believe he got $40 million. That breaks the entire market because now what is Lamar Jackson worth? I mean, who would you rather have on your team, Lamar Jackson or your boy? I'm being serious. I think I would rather have Lamar Jackson. I wouldn't even have to really think about it than Daniel Jones. So what is, and this is the whole thing that you have to say. Cleveland gave Deshaun Watson $240 million guaranteed. But here's what the NFL is saying. Cleveland is not the roadmap to how we're supposed to do business. But now these guys want them to operate like Cleveland. We should get a $240 million contract. And they're like, no, Cleveland's dumb. We're not doing that. And the more people that do bad deals, I think the more the market gets messed up for the people that are just trying to be normal. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Like Daniel Jones making $40 million a year is something that for me is the biggest surprise of the offseason. And I like Daniel Jones. After the Minnesota playoff game, I went on the record and was like, the Giants do not have to answer a quarterback question this offseason. And I meant that, but I did not mean like for the foreseeable future. I meant this offseason. And then that deal came out. He said he fired his agent, wants $40 million a year. I was like, dude, this dude's high. Do you know how much money Shannon Sharp made as not a Denver Bronco, a Baltimore Raven Denver Bronco, his entire playing career? And I know the times have changed. I'm aware of that. But check this out. Shannon Sharp made, I believe it was $46.5 million in his entire career. One of the greatest tight ends of all time, Hall of Famer. And I know that, like I said, times have changed, money, inflation, whatever. But to think that Daniel Jones is going to make about 95% of what Shannon Sharpe made in his whole career in one season with the Giants is just I have a hard time with that information. I really do. Bill says, yes, it's interesting. Like I've told you, we have 2-year out on Daniel Jones. I know there's the 2-year out. Um, Lamar wants a fully guaranteed deal. It's not going to happen and would never do that. Joe Shion. Yeah, you know me with names. I'm terrible. Yeah, Lamar, that's the big question. I mean, if he goes to Indianapolis, that seems like the place he's going to me because unless Houston, and I don't know if you caught our pod 2 days ago, but I mentioned this, he could easily go to Houston. Because if Houston trades their second overall pick, because look, at the end of the day, Houston might say, I don't care if we get CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. We don't like either of those two guys as much as we like Lamar Jackson. And this is not a debate. And they all feel strongly about that. And the Baltimore huddle, and they say, this is not repairable with what's happened with Lamar here. Do you really want your quarterback of this franchise, being, having any kind of resentment towards the team? He's literally the leader of the team. Like, we can't have that. So, I mean, you got to think about it that way. The Ravens might be like, you know what? Like, we want to keep Lamar, but we also know it's not possible. Relationships get like that. There can be parts of relationships where you want to be together, but like too much has happened. And this is kind of where I feel like the Ravens are with Lamar Jackson. I do think that the Ravens, and especially John Harbaugh, really want deeply to have Lamar Jackson on their team. I just think too much has happened and it's not going to work out. But look at who does pay a lot of money. The Texans. The Texans could just say, here, Baltimore, we can at least solve your quarterback question. You're losing Lamar, but we're going to give you either CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. And all of a sudden, you don't have to pay a quarterback now because now you got the rookie deal. So now you get to reset that 4-year clock because obviously the Ravens, I don't know what Lamar's asking for, but they are not, I'm not hearing a bunch of deals being put out there. So maybe it's not a good time right now for the type of deal Lamar wants. No problem. Reset the clock 4 years with a new young quarterback and let the Texans pay him because the Texans are obviously willing to pay people a lot of money. Look at this. Their left tackle, Laramie Tunsil. I didn't even know about this guy until 7:16 p.m. today. This guy is a 3-time Pro Bowler left tackle. This is for Houston. This is the part that blew my mind. Not being a left tackle, that's pretty normal. Look at this. He also is his own chief executive officer and just worked out a 3-year, $75 million contract with the Houston Texans to make him the highest paid left tackle in the NFL on an annual basis. For Tunsil, being able to get a historic deal was surefire indication that doing things his own way was the right way. It's also, in his belief, a step forward for a Texans franchise he's confident will turn its fortunes around in short order. I've always wanted to be the CEO of my own business team. Tunsil said on Wednesday, I always wanted to be the guy that leads my team, so I hired the team, which includes Saint Omni, Lawa Sani, Alexandra Meza. He hired people. I wanted to do something that has never happened before, making history for the second time in a row. No one has ever done that besides me. I've always wanted to be the leader to start something new, and that's what I did. What? I'm not sure. Like, this is all it says right here. There is one last sentence. Sorry. I'm just showing other players it's possible, that it's possible to get done. You can also become a CEO of your business team and get it done. So, if I'm understanding this correctly, and yes, I am kind of slow, he is literally the CEO of the team that he's actively playing for. Did any of you guys know that this was going on right now? Because honestly, I've never heard of anything like this before. The guy's a CEO. He's hiring the staff. And then it almost feels like a conflict of interest. Then he becomes the highest paid left tackle. I don't got a problem with it. I'm just saying it's super interesting. I've never heard anything like that before. Bill says, yeah, he bought in a team to help him negotiate. He talked about it on McAfee today. See, I missed the McAfee show today. I would love to hear that interview. But look, I think the Texans might be willing to do that. And look, the Texans' latest quarterback, real quarterback, not Davis Mills. No offense to Davis Mills, but the last time they had a really good quarterback was Deshaun Watson. So we already know how the ownership feels about having an athletic quarterback that, not necessarily like a Joe Burrow pocket guy, but a weapon at quarterback. Lamar Jackson. I think that's a pretty good swap. Deshaun Watson for Lamar Jackson. I feel like this deal, everybody wins. The other way it could go would be Indianapolis, but this is too tricky because if Indy were to trade their picks to Baltimore, they don't have the first or second pick. Now, it's very possible that Baltimore doesn't have an interest in any quarterback not named CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. So that kind of messes with Indianapolis's leverage unless they're able to move up in the draft and take that spot from the Texans, which will not happen if the Texans want to trade that pick to the Ravens. But I think we can all agree, even though it sounds crazy, that either the Texans or the Colts, and obviously your third option would be the Ravens, is where Lamar Jackson's going to play. And I really think it's between the Texans and the Colts. I think those are my only two logical options. Bill said it's pronounced like Shane. Yeah, I had a hard time with it too. Yeah, he bought in a team. Okay, sorry, I read that one already. So yeah, man, there's just been a lot of really crazy news going on this day, and it's been awesome to just sit here and absorb it all as a fan of football, because when you lose the actual games week after week after week, it is sad. When that final game ends, the Super Bowl, I literally looked at Rick and I was like, dude, what are we going to do? We literally don't have any more football. And I got to say, so far, you guys have been amazing. Like, this entire offseason has just cruised on. I don't feel like I'm missing football because of this show. And especially the support we're getting right now. 16 people are in here watching this right now. We have never had like those type of numbers on this podcast. And I'm not going to just look at it and act like it's a normal thing. I'm going to take the time to say to every person listening that I really appreciate this. And I know my partner, Rick, really appreciates it too. I can't wait to share it with him. I hope you guys had a good time. I really hope, if you wouldn't mind, before you guys leave, if you would subscribe to the channel, and it'll get notified when we go live next. We go live on Mondays and Thursdays, and on Wednesdays, I do only football with Kyle. So definitely subscribe if you guys had a good time, if you enjoyed this show, because honestly, we really appreciate it. It helps us grow, especially when you guys share it with your friends and stuff like that. So that is pretty much all my news stuff I have. I'm going to really quick. I like to do this for you guys, especially in the off season, is I'm going to pull up the dates that are big that are going to come up. So here are the NFL key dates coming up in 2023. We're in 2023. So right now we're at March 22nd. So the next big date is going to be March 26th through 29th. And that's the annual league meeting that happens in Phoenix for you football nerds that want to know this. April 3rd is the start of off-season workouts for teams with new head coaches. Broncos, Panthers, Texans, Colts. I think those are the big five. If I'm missing one, sorry. April 17th is the start of the off-season workouts for teams with, okay, so that one. Oh, wait, for teams with no head coaching change. So all the other teams are going to go April 17th. So you got a 2-week head start if you got a new head coach. And look at that. It just seems like all of a sudden we're back, baby. we can start watching our teams practice. April 22nd, the last day of restricted free agent signing period, and last day to match offer sheets for restricted free agents. That's totally way too deep into the weeds. I don't go that deep, but Rick does. NFL trivia is tomorrow night. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for reminding me. You guys are going to love that. We've been doing so many cool things. Like last week, we did 2022 trivia. So we didn't really go deep into history of football. We just had a bunch of really fun facts, especially things that would have blown your mind, like the leading receiver in the NFC Championship game, the Eagles 49ers game was it was like AJ Brown, and he had like 37 yards receiving. That's for both teams. That was the leading receiver. So there was a lot of like, obviously I'm trying to, trick you guys, but not trick you. I just want you to like see how funny this stuff is. Week 1 last year, Patrick Mahomes had the most yards passing in week 1, NFL opening kickoff. And then I wrote like who was second. And obviously you have 4 options. But Matt Ryan, as bad of a season as he had, that overtime game, week 1 that ended in a tie, actually he threw like 330 something, 340. He threw like a lot. So just a lot of like really Matt Ryan type stuff going on. So definitely check out our trivia stuff tomorrow. And we did an NFL draft one, like who ran the fastest 40-yard dash, just who's the fastest quarterback in the last 5 years. Surprisingly, who was the quarterback? It was like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and 2 other dudes. And it was just, I think Josh Allen was the fastest. Lot of good stuff there. So if you guys enjoy this, definitely come back tomorrow so you can see my partner in crime and I do the NFL trivia. And if you guys have any recommendations of what the topic, and I mean right now, you could put it in the comments and I will put it together. If what you want the trivia to be based on. So if you have a topic, obviously no Breaking Bad trivia. This is NFL. It's got to stay with the theme here. But if you wanted to do like quarterback only, running backs only, we're getting into the draft. We kind of did that one already, but I'll let it breathe for a second here. And always willing to take recommendations from you guys because honestly, you're what drives this whole operation. So, and we'll see if Cam Newton gets a new home by tomorrow morning. I'm just seeing really quick if there was any other NFL news that came out while I was doing this podcast. Ooh, Jets play their last card to convince Aaron Rodgers to join them. This is an article from US Today. The New York Jets already know about Aaron Rodgers' interest in playing for them. However, they've played their last card in order to finally convince him to sign soon as possible. What was it? It seems like a matter of time. It's only a matter of time to see Aaron Rodgers wearing New York Jets jersey. Although the quarterback is really interested in playing for them, they have not closed the deal. However, the AFC East team has played its last card. Get to the card. Aaron Rodgers' time with Green Bay soon coming to an end. Is this one of those articles that never says anything? The deal is not closed yet, but it seems like the Jets are already warming up for Rodgers' arrival. Now that this literally, God, this is why I never do this live on air, because this story literally says nothing. It's a whole lot of nothing. Just wanting to say the words Aaron Rodgers for clicks. And look at that. It worked live on the air. But all right. So nobody had any topic for the trivia. That is totally okay. Totally fine and acceptable. We're still going to put something great together for you guys tomorrow. I wanted to give a special shout out to Bill. He was the one and only OG going back and forth with me in the comments. Bill, you know that we appreciate you and we literally cheer for the Giants because of you. But we will see you guys tomorrow. Don't forget to sub on your way out. Really, really would appreciate it. Make the night. And until then, we'll see you next time. Go Broncos.